Gangs from House Van Saar are elite groups of high-tech, high firepower, and also highly irradiated know-alls. But who are they, and more importantly, how do they play? Well, as a very broad overview, House Van Saar are one of the oldest gangs in Necromunda. They are tech artificers and gunsmiths of the Hive with access to technology that's bordering on magic thanks to their super secret STC machine that no one, air quotes, knows about from the Dark Age of technology. But all this technology comes at a cost, and House Van Saar have short lives. A half-life, if you will. I'll see myself out. Due to how irradiated they are from this technology that they access from the STC, and they need to use specialised suits to keep their ravaged bodies functioning. And when eventually their bodies do fail or become injured, they use the marvels of said high-tech Dark Age technology to augment themselves with complex cybernetica. When it comes to the tabletop, Van Saar gangs are characterised by elite, low model count gangs that have great access to both shooting skills and premium weapon options. They're generally thought of and often accused of being a somewhat static gun line, gestures broadly at Tau, of relentless, accurate, and at times downright oppressive firepower. However, they can be made into a pretty fluff-friendly force who can still access all the other bits that Van Saar are known for over the course of a campaign if needs be. So, in a nutshell, they're an elite gang who have a technological niche in how they can overcome and dominate almost every other gang in the game. So, without further waffle, let's get stuck into the autopsy of House Van Saar. So, first up, house mechanics. These come in the form of house-specific skill access to tech skills and the Archeo-Cybernetica augmentations. You could also, arguably, include the shooting skill list as a house mechanic for them, as it can be integral to their core playstyle. So I'll give a very brief overview of those skills and the ganger entries that they apply to when they come up. And the Radphage, which I'll cover now. So Radphage, after fully resolving any successful hit a fighter suffers from this weapon with this trait, roll a d6. On a 4+, that fighter will automatically suffer a flesh wound. I'll come out and say it. Controversial opinion. I like Radphage. I know, hate me in the comments. So, weapons with this trait are often overlooked because of the shiny plasma guns and such that have significantly higher strength to them. However, I think there's definitely legs to a Radphage-centric gang build, and yes, the strength is low, but keep in mind that anything you successfully hit, which will be almost all of the things, almost all of the time with your 2-up ballistic skill, regardless of causing a wound, you get a 50-50 shot at an indefensible flesh wound. So just roll a 4+. There you go. That simple. I fixed it. There you go. And yes, this will stack with whatever damage went through from the base profile of the weapon. So, let's take a radgun wielding tech versus a Goliath ganger. The radgun is a template weapon, so you literally can't miss. Strength 2 versus the toughness 4 Goliath bad guy does, however, mean a 6 to wound, but we don't really care if it wounds because we have an automatic 50-50 shot at causing an automatic flesh wound. So think of the radgun as realistically the same strength as whatever it is you're trying to hit with it. So again, rad wielding tech versus slave ogring. Strength 2 versus toughness 5. Yes, again, 6 to wound, but do we care if it wounds? No, only that it hits, because on a 4+, thanks to the Radphage trait, we're dishing out a flesh wound. I like Radphage. It scales, it does chip damage, it gets more effective the more of it you have, and it's pretty thematic. Now, it's zero use against rival Van Saar gangs, but gestures broadly at las cannons. And against everyone else, it will work, generally speaking. Just keep in mind, if you're doing Radphage, then do Radphage. Don't toe dip. It's full send or not at all. Plus, it's a way to stop the I hate Van Saar plasma. Oh, you know, that guy. Surprise your friends with involuntary chemotherapy. They'll love it. Anyway, under the tech skill list, the only ganger who has access to this as a primary skill set is the Archaeotech, with Tech Hunters, Augmex, and your leader being the others with access as a secondary skill. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what the tech skills are. Number 1 on the list, cold and calculating. Once per round when making a cool or willpower check, this fighter may make the check against their intelligence characteristic instead. Yes, this is niche, but as everyone who has the option to take this skill has better intelligence stat than their willpower stat, it's at least somewhat useful. Number 2 is Gadgeteer. If this fighter is in the starting crew prior to the first turn, they may modify the weapon traits of any weapon they carry that has the Plentiful trait. If they do so until the end of the battle, the weapon loses the Plentiful trait and gains one of the following as chosen by the controlling player: knockback, pulverise, rending, or shock. Alternatively, a Plentiful weapon with Rapid Fire X can add 1 to the X value, so if it's Rapid Fire 1, it would become Rapid Fire 2. Now, adding a specific trait to overcome whatever gang you're up against sounds great in theory, but let's take this one apart a bit more and really try and understand it. So, first, it only comes into play if the ganger who has this skill is part of the starting crew, and the weapon has to have the Plentiful trait in order to use this skill at all. The traits you can select from are decent, apart perhaps from knockback, which is situationally useful. Pulverise gives you a post-wound roll toughness check and a d6 to turn a flesh wound to a serious injury, which is always nice. Rending gives 1 extra point of damage against a fighter or an additional damage dice against a vehicle on a wound roll of 6, and shock auto wounds on a hit roll of 6. You can also add 1 to the rapid fire of your weapon if it already has it. Keep in mind the only ganger who can get this skill at creation is the Archaeotech, who, from the equipment on the house list, can only use it on a las pistol or las subcarbine. It's not really that good a skill when you put it in that context. Moving on to number 3, Mental Mastery. This fighter cannot become subject to the insane condition. In addition, if this fighter is chosen as the target of a weird power and is standing and active or prone and pinned, they may attempt to disrupt the power as if they were a psycho. So this is a bit of anti-psychery-ness, but again, it's only of use to the person targeted by that weird power, so situationally useful at best. Number 4, we have Photonic Engineer. This fighter may apply a +1 modifier to the strength characteristic of all las weapons used by them. Doing so, however, causes the weapon to gain the Unstable trait. Sad face. In addition, the fighter may re-roll failed ammo checks with las weaponry, provided the weapon does not have the Unstable trait. So it almost negatives itself out, but this sounds like it could be good. Adding +1 to the strength of a weapon is good. However, this is specifically only a las weapon, and if you do so, it gains the Unstable trait. So let's look at the last sentence of this skill again. So to quote, in addition, this fighter may re-roll failed ammo checks with las weaponry, provided the weapon does not have the Unstable trait. So you're not actually going to re-roll failed ammo checks on that las weapon since it has the Unstable trait from using this skill. Oh, and Unstable means that on a roll of the ammo symbol on the firepower dice, you roll a d6 and have a 50-50 chance to go in immediately out of action on a 1, 2, or 3. So that's cool. I'd likely not ever take this skill, but if the dice gods smile on you, the extra strength on a las weapon is nice, I suppose. Anyway, number 5, Radphaged. When this fighter is hit by a weapon with the gas or toxin traits, the opposing player must roll 2d6 and discard the highest when rolling to see if this fighter is affected. In addition, should this fighter suffer a hit from a weapon with the Radphaged trait, roll an additional d6 as normal. However, on a roll of 4 or higher, they do not suffer an additional flesh wound. Instead, the fighter may discard a flesh wound they have already suffered. Finally, if any scenario that uses the pitch black rules, this fighter always counts as being revealed. This skill gives you some resistance to gas and toxin weapons, presumably because you're so irradiated that no toxin or disease could hope to infiltrate your glowing irradiated lungs. And since you're essentially a ghoul now, if you get shot by a weapon with a Radphage trait, if it goes off, you remove a flesh wound, which again is situationally useful, but if pitch black comes up a lot, being continually revealed as a bright green glowing irradiated gun-wielding maniac is probably not ideal. So the final skill, number 6, is Weaponsmith. Any weapons this fighter is equipped with lose the scarce trait if it has it. Any weapons the fighter is equipped with will gain the plentiful trait if it does not have the scarce trait. Weapons that already have the plentiful trait gain no additional benefit from this skill. So you take this on a weapon with scarce and it changes to have plentiful. Any other weapon, it's no use. So let's consider this one a bit further. So at creation, it's just the Archaeotech that will have access to this. So nothing of benefit there. However, as a secondary skill on a plasma or melt-a-gun carrying champ, suddenly it's pretty good. Overall, the tech skills are at worst meh, and at best situationally useful, but let's take a look at the other unique house mechanic, Archaeo-Cybernetica. This is a form of insurance for your entire gang from the effects of lasting injuries, and you can even spend experience points on them as an advancement, but this will place the fighter into recovery. So leaders and champions can take them at creation if you wish, but word of caution, your gang will already be elite and super expensive, so it's probably more wise to forgo this and only grab them as advancements, or ideally for dealing with an injury. Each item of Cybernetica can only be used as a one per location kind of deal, and they come in a few different levels to reflect the quality of them. Each Cybernetica can be upgraded from the prior level, which again will place the fighter into recovery, and additionally each level of upgrade stacks with a prior one. Now, these can get damaged, so if a fighter with Cybernetica suffers a lasting injury to a location where there is Cybernetica, roll a d6. On a 4+, the effects of the lasting injury are ignored, albeit the fighter goes into recovery. And only in a 1, 2, 3, they'll still ignore the injury effects and go into recovery, but also the Cybernetica is now damaged, meaning the effects of it are disregarded until the fighter has repaired it for half the credits cost of whatever level it is at as part of the pre-battle sequence or during downtime. So now that that's been said, let's look at each Cybernetica augmentation, its costs and what it does. As I mentioned before, Cybernetica comes in 3 different levels, so Alpha, Gamma and Omega, to represent good, better and best. Starting off with Cranial Cybernetica. Alpha level is 30 credits and this fighter will thereafter be immune to the insane condition. Gamma is 40 credits and the fighter will be immune to both the insane and intoxicated conditions, and the Omega level at 75 credits, the fighter is immune to insane, intoxicated, and in addition, they cannot become broken. So the lower levels of this, the Alpha and Gamma one, are situationally useful, again, depending on how likely you are to be insane or intoxicated in your campaign. Your mileage for this may vary. However, at the 75 credits and can't become broken, that can be very much game changing if it's all gone wrong, but I can think of better things to spend 75 credits on, if I'm absolutely honest. Moving on to Ocular Cybernetica, again Alpha, Gamma and Omega. The Alpha level is 50 credits. This fighter is considered to always be equipped with an infrasight, the benefits of which are applied to any ranged weapon they carry. This is nice. So things that normally can't have an infrasight, because you have one shoved into your head, you look through your eyes, I assume, and have infrared eyes that you can then apply to your weapon, which is nice for 50 credits. Gamma level at 85, the fighter is considered to always be equipped with both an infrasight and a monocyte, the benefits of which are applied to, again, any ranged weapon they carry. And at Omega level, 105 credits, fighter is considered to always be equipped with an infrasight, a monocyte, the benefits of which are applied to any ranged weapon they carry, and also photo goggles. I like this tree quite a lot, because it allows you to do very stereotypically Saar things, if you want to be that kind of Saar player who has an infrasight and a monocyte on a plasma cannon, and somehow you also make it rapid fire because Saar reasons. Syndextrous Cybernetica, that's very difficult to say. Alpha level at 50 credits, fighter ignores the effects of disarm. Gamma level at 75 credits, the fighter ignores the effects of disarm, and they do not suffer -1 to hit modifier when making close combat attacks if they have to turn to face their opponent before attacking. You don't want to be in combat as a Saar anyway. Now, the Omega level 125 credits, fighter ignores the effects of disarm. They don't suffer the -1 to hit modifier when making close combat attacks if they have to turn to face the opponent before attacking, and in addition, this fighter's attacks cannot be parried. If you're building close combat Saar, you're doing Saar wrong. If you've successfully done it, please put a comment below and let me know, but it sounds insane to me. Motive Cybernetica, Alpha level 35 credits. The fighter ignores negative movement modifiers caused by moving through difficult terrain. This is a nice one for the Ash Wastes or for kind of bad zone environments where you're likely to encounter it. Gamma level at 65 credits, the fighter ignores any negative movement modifiers caused by moving through difficult terrain and adds 2 inches to their movement when moving vertically, for example, climbing up a ladder or other vertical surfaces. The Omega level comes in at 100 credits. The fighter ignores any negative movement modifiers caused by moving through difficult terrain and adds 2 to their movement when climbing vertically, i.e. up a ladder or any other vertical surface. In addition, the fighter may reroll failed initiative checks to see if they fall when they go from standing to prone within half an inch of an edge or level or platform. Again, I can think of better things to spend 100 credits on, like a plasma gun. Moving on to Torsonic Cybernetica. Alpha level is 50 credits. An unarmed attack made by this fighter has a damage characteristic of 3 rather than 1, which is nice. Gamma level at 75. An unarmed attack may be made by this fighter has a damage characteristic of 3 rather than usual 1, and in addition, this fighter may apply a +2 modifier to their strength characteristic when resolving hits made with a weapon that has either the melee or versatile trait. This could be nice on an Archaeotech. Omega level, 150 credits. An unarmed attack made by this fighter has a damage characteristic of 3 rather than usual 1. In addition, the fighter may apply +2 modifier to the strength characteristic when resolving hits made with a weapon that has either melee or versatile. And finally, any weapon this fighter is equipped with is considered to have suspensors fitted to it. Are we starting to see a theme here with the Cybernetica? It's very niche, very situationally useful, very much you would have to build towards using one of these. This is why I don't recommend them at creation and would instead use them to balance out negatives that you pick up through lasting injuries. Moving on again to our Vascular Cybernetica. Alpha level, 40 credits. The fighter may apply a +1 modifier to their toughness characteristic for the purpose of the number of flesh wounds they can take before going out of action. Very nice. Gamma, 80 credits. The fighter can apply +1 modifier to their toughness characteristic for the purpose of the number of flesh wounds that they can take before going out of action. In addition, this fighter may reroll any toughness check they are required to make. Again, if you're playing a lot of Escher, this will be nice. And Omega level at 130 credits. The fighter may apply +1 modifier to their toughness characteristic for the purpose of the number of flesh wounds they can take before going out of action. In addition, the fighter may reroll any toughness check they are required to make. And finally, in the end phase of each round, this fighter may discard a flesh wound they have suffered. On to gang members, and starting with our leader, the Vansar Prime. This guy comes with movement 4, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 2+, strength and toughness of 3, 2 wounds, 5 up initiative and 2 attacks. Mental stat wise, they are leadership and intelligence 4+, with a willpower and cool of 5+. So very well rounded mental stats and physical stats that push you towards shooting things. Gestures broadly at Vansar. They come with the usual gang hierarchy and tools of the trade rules alongside group activation 2, with primary skill access from shooting, savant and leadership skill trees. Your leader runs at a base cost of 130 credits and comes with armoured body glove, giving them immunity to radphage weapons and a 6+ base save. However, if you use the armoured body glove alongside any other armour, it will not only provide resistance to radphage, but give you +1 to your armour save. So this plus mesh means that you have a 4+ save at the very start of a campaign, which is nice. And as we know by now, I'm a big fan of building your character type models, so non-basic gangers, around a skill that ideally complements the overall structure and playstyle of the gang that you're running. Keep in mind that everyone apart from Juves and Prospects has access to Savant as a primary skill. I'd say your best bet is to choose between leadership or shooting skill trees, depending on what your gang needs and wants to do. And given that you'll be running a low model count gang to start with and have access to leadership skills, I'd say give strong consideration to Iron Will on your leader so that you can subtract 1 from any bottle checks you need to make as long as this guy is on the table, not prone and not seriously injured. From the shooting skill tree, hip shooting can provide some much needed mobility to your leader who at movement 4 has the same movement as a squat. Boo squats. So at times you will be found woefully out of place to bring a weapon to bear, so keep hip shooting in mind. However, almost anything from the shooting skill tree is worth considering. You want to dual wield plasma pistols and shoot them with carefree abandon at 2+? Give Gunfighter a look. Want to ruin someone's day when they thought placing something important behind the juve would give them valuable seconds of life from your las cannon, which is on your house equipment list, by the way? Give the marksman skill a go. Or if you really hate your friends, put a plasma cannon on a guy with trick shot. Shooting skills are spicy on Van Saar though, and I'd argue they're not as useful as they would be to any other gang. Van Saar can make great skills downright oppressive if you really want to, so just keep that in mind. And another thing to think about is that your gang will be expensive. Just because you can take the super duper ultra Kelly guns immediately doesn't mean you necessarily should. I've made a few different leader builds for you to have a ponder about and maybe use as a jumping off point for your own leaders. So first up, we have Budget Prime. This guy comes with mastercrafted lasgun, mesh and armoured body glove, giving him a 4+ save that will last just fine through most of a campaign. This version clocks in at 165 credits and is about as cheap as you can make a usable leader. But this build, give consideration to a shooting skill that will benefit you when you buy a quote-unquote better weapon later on. As I mentioned, I'm a fan of hip shooting, and on this build that will give you a 26-inch minimum threat range, so move 8 inches, shoot your lasgun within 18 inch and use that +1 short range accuracy to negate the -1 of using the run and gun action from the hip shooting skill. Good times. Next up, we have the somewhat standard issue Plasma Prime. This is almost the default build that everyone says to use. Again, mesh armour and armoured undersuit, giving you a good solid 4+ save to start, but this time, take a plasma gun. Plasma Prime comes in at 245 credits, so very nearly a quarter of your gang's founding budget for most campaigns. And with that in mind, I think you need to default to Iron Will as your skill of choice here, and just rely on your naturally good ballistic skill. The most expensive and never going to happen unless you have some type of master plan and the starting credits to do it is one I like to call Cannon Prime. So, as with the others, Cannon Prime has mesh and armor body glove combo for the 4+ save, bringing your base cost to 145. Then, take your pick from a cannon. Rad Cannon or Plasma Cannon will bring you to 275 credits, and the Las Cannon, which is on your house list by the way, you can get this whenever you want, will take you to 300 credits, or for the low cost of 325 credits, if you're already spending the credits, spend a little bit more and give this guy a multi-melter. Oh, and if you fancy being able to move and shoot, because that's a nice thing to be able to do with cannons of immediate hostility, throw an extra 60 credits onto that cost for use of suspensors. Yep. Cannon Prime with suspensors ranges from 335 to 385 credits. I do not recommend this course of action for starting a gang, but it's your gang. Do you want? Just don't cry to me when your multi-melter 385 credit guy dies on turn 1 after falling off a railing when he was hit by a shotgun. So, Cannon Prime builds, you really, really should take Iron Will so that your gang of 3 guys might stay on the table into turn 2. You have been warned, and again, don't recommend this guy starting. Now we move on to our standard champion of House Van Saar, the Augmech. This guy comes in at 110 credits with armoured undersuit as standard, movement 4, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 2+, strength and toughness both of 3, 2 wounds, 4+ initiative and 1 attack. Mental stats wise, pretty comparable with the leader. This guy has leadership and intelligence of 5+, cool and willpower 6+, and the usual gang hierarchy rules, tools of the trade, etc, and group activation 1. Primary skills here are shooting and savant, and given that you'll be using an expensive gang, I'd be leaning towards choosing something from the savant skill tree. Again, controversial opinion, but I think Van Saar shooting is more than lethal enough that you don't have to automatically pick a shooting skill unless that's your preferred playstyle, in which case I'll shut up and you do what you want. Anyway, Savant skill-wise, I say Connected and Fixer are my top two. Connected allowing this guy to do 2 post-battle actions, which you'll need given the limited number of gang members and champions you will have, and Fixer as a passive credit generator to top up wins and to buffer against losses. The rest of the Savant skills are generally covered by some other member of the gang, but depending on your overall gang builds, I'd add Munitioneer as a choice to consider to provide some reassurance for the ammo rolls on bigger weapons platforms. Build-wise, first up we have our Budget Champ, with much the same loadout as Budget Prime. Armoured Undersuit, Mesh Armour, Master Crafted Lasgun. This build comes in at 145 credits and allows you some wiggle room to perhaps have a gang of more than 4 guys. But when we look at the picture of a gang overall, we find that probably the best niche for the Augmech is as a special weapons carrier, the default option being the Plasmech, which is exactly the same as the Budget Champ, just replacing the Lasgun with a plasma gun. This will cost you 225 credits. The third option I give you to consider is the Pistol Plasmech. Same cost as the Plasmech, just using 2 plasma pistols instead of the plasma gun, and this guy kind of goes against my stance on the shooting skills and would strongly recommend that you go for the gunfighter skill. But again, take into consideration what your gang as a whole is geared towards and plug this guy in accordingly. The Archaeotech is the alternative champion available to you and your Van Saar gang, coming in with Armour Body Glove, Movement of 4, Weapon Skill 4+, again Ballistic Skill 2+, Strength and Toughness of 3 with 2 wounds, Initiative 5+, and 2 attacks. Mental stats are Kill and Willpower both at 6+, Intelligence of 5 and a Leadership of 4. Base cost, they run at 125 credits, have the usual gang hierarchy and Tools of Trade rules, but instead of group activation we get this unique rule, Master of Cybernetica, which means any Cybernetica purchased is half price for this guy, rounding up to the nearest 5 credits, and they can choose any 1 alpha level Cybernetica for free when added to the gang. Nice. Skill access, we get access to Savant and Tech as primary skills, and as I mentioned at the start of this deep dive, Tech skills are a tad lacking when compared to almost anything else. For the free Cybernetica creation, I'd say the best options are Vascular Cybernetica for +1 toughness initially for the purpose of flesh wounds, but keep in mind this isn't an actual stats increase, it's just effectively an extra 0 toughness, if that makes sense. The other option that I quite like in this is using the Ocular Cybernetica to always have the benefits of Infrasight apply to any weapon, since it's an infrasight mounted in your skull and not onto a specific weapon, meaning you get a techno workaround for the usual restrictions. For builds, I don't really have a budget friendly option as it feels like a missed opportunity, and if you give them a las pistol for a total cost of 130 credits, you can do this. I just don't see it as a great use of the champion given that they have that free Cybernetica to build around. But with that being said, the 2 main builds I recommend for this guy are, first up, the Spooder Tech, trademark pending, with alpha level Vascular Cybernetica and Mesh Armour, providing the 4+ save with the Armoured Undersuit thing, and that extra 0 level of toughness, again, hopefully that makes sense, before going out of action. Spider Rig, which is paired melee weapon with versatile 3-inch, shock, parry and entangle, all for 80 credits, and give him a plasma pistol as well. Why not? Extra 50 credits. Brings us to a nice round-ish figure of 255 credits. Not cheap, again, over a quarter of most starting gangs' credit costs, but now you have a guy with 4 attacks on the charge thanks to the paired strat of the Spider Rig, plus 1 for charging and plus another 1 for having a sidearm, giving us 6 attacks on the charge with 3-inch versatile range, shock, hitting on 3s, strength 4, -1 AP and 1 damage a pop. Oh, and because of the versatile 3-inch, as long as you're at versatile range, you are safe from reaction attacks, giving this guy effectively an 8 to 10-inch charge range. Nobody ever expects to be punched to death by Van Saar, but here we are. That rhymes. The other option I like is the Archeo Radiator. I know it's a dumb name, but here we are. This guy I would give the Alpha Ocular to give the Infrasight to everything, Mesh and Armour Body Glove for the 4+ save, Rad Beamer and Plasma Pistol. Again, expensive, 260 credits, and arguably the quote-unquote weaker of the 2 options, but let's consider this. The Rad Beamer, Disperse Beam being Rapid Fire 1, and Rad Phage. Rad Phage is triggered on successful hits, and at 2+ ballistic skill with no negatives out to 24 inch, and with thanks to the ubiquitous all-out weapons infrasight rammed into your skull, partial cover is of 0 detriment to you. You now have, in my opinion, quite a tasty and thematic weapon, and say you're lucky enough to get 3 hits on the firepower dice, you automatically get 3 chances at rolling 4-ups to cause flesh wounds. People underestimate Radphage, and even if they go out their way to buy a 10 credit hazard suit for everyone else, that's fine. You will always have the plasma pistol to counter it, and pretty much anything else you want from your house list as well. So I think the best loadout is the Spooder version, but it's a very, very close race for me between the Spooder and the Radiator, just a nose behind. For both, I'd probably be taking Fixer to keep passive credit income rolling as a credits counter to other players buying hazard suits. And by credits counter, I mean save it up and buy a las cannon. Your hazard suit is no use, friend. On to the newest addition to House Van Saar. By way of Hive Secundus, we have the Tech Hunters. You can take 2 of each kind of them, and yes, you can fill your gang with them if you so wished, as the specialist subheading on these guys just denotes them to be a special fighter type and not a specialist in the usual sense of promoting someone to a specialist. Good job on being nice and clear, GW. They can't use their advancements like a specialist ganger, for example. It's just that these guys have a very particular set of skills. Hopefully that made some kind of sense. Tech Hunters all come with the Gangfighter specialist rule, but not actually being a specialist. Tools of the trade and expert in their field. The last one just means that there's no more than 2 of each subtype can be included in your gang. They come in at 75 credits base with an armoured body glove, movement 5, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 3+, strength and toughness both of 3, 1 wound, initiative of 5+, and 1 attack. Mental stats, leadership and intelligence 6+, and cool and willpower both 7+. All subtypes come with shooting and savant as primary skills for when they become a specialist. Subtypes are Augur Tech, Biotechnist, Gun Tech, and Technomat, and each of these subtypes has specific weapons / accessories and personal equipment, etc. that are restricted to each one of these subtypes, but outside of that, they can take pretty much whatever you want. I'll go through each subtype and each of their unique weapons loadouts. First up being the Augur Tech. Unique weapons and loadout for this guy is the Fox Array and Augur Specs. Fox Array giving the Augur Tech group activation 1, while the Augur Specs dishes out a 12-inch bubble preventing your opponent from using Infiltrate to get inside that, and it also prevents reinforcements within 12-inch of that guy. This is potentially very annoying against certain gangs that rely on shenanigans, and very, 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 very borderline broken / OP in certain scenarios, particularly if you have 2. The Biotechnist comes with the Medicae kit and several Medicae. Medicae kit given an extra injury dice to roll when you're assisting a recovery test of a friendly fighter, so you're always going to be rolling at least 3 dice and pick which one you want. The Servo Medicae gives a whole new basic action to this guy. It allows a friendly fighter who's seriously injured to make a recovery roll as if it were the end phase, but this won't prevent them doing it in the end phase. So you're basically getting 2 bites of the cherry with this one, which is nice. Gun Tech. The long las available to the Gun Tech is the same as is available via Trading Post, but allows you to reach out to 36 inch with very accurate shooting, particularly if coupled with the aim action first, and the Refraction Cloak, making your fighter harder to hit. There is always a -1 to hit for your opponent shooting at you with ranged weapons, and if you stayed still the previous turn, that becomes -2 instead. The Technomat has access to a combi weapon, which is a flamer and mancatcher, and it feels very, very niche. It's a flamer that also has unstable. Not good. I'd rather save these 60 credits and buy a rad gun, to be perfectly honest, and this is what I'll be using this guy for. They have access to a light carapace on their house list as well, which combined with the armoured body glove can give this guy a 3+ save from the off for investing 80 credits into it to get that light carapace. So you're basically getting heavy carapace when these 2 things combine, but for less. Overall, Tech Hunters are a gap filler for your gang to enhance what they're needing. And while you could build a gang using them, I think that's a novelty trap. Your results may vary, but certainly I'd be using them for extra longevity via the Biotechnist, or an extra armoured Radgunner in the form of Light Caribous wearing Technomat. And now onto the tech, aka your basic ganger. This one comes with movement 4, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 3+, with strength and toughness both of 3, 1 wound apiece, 5+ initiative, and 1 attack as base. They have leadership and intelligence of 6+, with cool and willpower both being 7+. They come equipped with the armoured body glove, and when they have enough experience, access to the savant and shooting skill trees, which make them much like the rest of the gang. They have a base cost of 65 credits and can be promoted to a specialist ganger who gets access to special and heavy weapons. For gangers, the non-specialist basic ganger, generally at the start of the campaign, you'll either have them with a lasgun, making them 75 points, or a las carbine, making them 85 points. The difference in weapons is down to personal choice, and I'd probably avoid any armour over the body glove at creation unless you have spare credits after your leader, champs and linchpin gangers have all been equipped. The humble lasgunner option is a very reliable weapon option. Short range up to 18 inch with +1 accuracy bonus means you're reliably getting into 2+ ballistic skill territory frequently throughout a game. The long range of 24 with no negatives to accuracy is also great. On a base ballistic skill model of 3+, and at strength 3, it will wound most things except Goliath, Slave Ogrins, Squats, similar on a 4+. Oh, and it's a 2-up ammo roll with the Plentiful trait. This weapon is downright deadly in the hands of Van Saar from the off, and when other gangs start up-armouring or you have a few credits to spare, you can spend 20 on a hotshot las pack to make your las gun now strength 4, AP 1, dropping the Plentiful trait and replacing it with a 4+ ammo roll. Very decent trade-off as far as I'm concerned. The las carbine will cost you 20 credits and is slightly shorter range las gun, but with rapid fire 1. You could also give this a hotshot las pack to make it pretty punchy, rapid fire weapon, but again this choice is down to your taste and what you're up against. But as the theme of Van Saar, if you're behind the curve against some other gang, you almost certainly will have a techno-based solution to fix it. For your sophisticated specialist ganger who has access to special weapons, for 100 credits you can choose between plasma gun or radgun. I like both, but keep in mind if you're the guy whose gang is an oops, all plasma guns gang, your opponent may not necessarily have that much fun, and the radgun is for lists, like I mentioned earlier, that if you do radphage, then do radphage. For 20 credits more, so 120 credits total, you can purchase a grav gun, which is a nice choice depending on what type of gangs you're playing against, and like everything else in Van Saar, if it becomes a problem after creation, you can always fix it with more high-tech shenanigans. The grav gun, main thing about it is the gravitation pulse. This is an odd weapon trait that when you hit a fighter with it, your opponent must roll equal to or under their strength on a d6, with a 6 always being a fail. If they don't, they suffer the weapon's damage with no armour save being allowed, and with the grav gun causing 2 damage a time. This can be great fun. For you, not them. Most things have strength 3, so this weapon will wound them on a 1, 2 or a 6, so 50-50 chance really. But this gets better against, say, Goliath at generally strength 4. This will go off in a 1, 2, 3 or 6. For anything with strength 5, unless they roll a 5, they are taking 3 damage. Also for use against vehicles, if you hit it, you use that arc's toughness to test against. This time it's equal to or over the value, and 6s count as a successful roll. So basically, anything medium vehicle and above is going to have a bad time and suffer 2 damage to the body location with no armour save allowed. Hooray! Oh, and go ahead and leave that 3-inch blast template wherever it is for the remainder of the round. Any model that's going to be trying to move through this area will use 2 inch of their movement for every 1 inch they actually move. Note that this affects all vehicles, regardless of locomotion, and then remove the blast marker during the end phase. What I'm saying is, Vansar have choices, and it can often be distracting seeing a las cannon on your house list, but make sure you consider how your gang is built and what you need to get the most from their playstyle. Ideally, without ruining the day of your opponent too much, of course. So, without further ado, on to the junior members of the gang, Juves and Prospects. First, we'll take a look at the Prospect, our Neotech. The Neotech has all the usual Prospect rules for hot-headed, fast learner, tools of the trade and gang fighter. You can promote them into either champion of your choice between Augmech or Archaeotech as well, which is pretty good considering they will also keep their War Gear, aka the Graph Cutter. More on that in a second. Stats wise, their movement is 5 unless they're on a Graph Cutter, then it's 7 inch and the Graph Cutter is included in their cost anyway. So yeah, they have a 4+ ballistic skill, which compared to most Vansar is not great, but compared to every other gang, it's actually not that bad. Strength and toughness, both 3, 1 wound, 1 attack, and come with the armor body glove, same as everyone else. Mental stats, they're not particularly impressive with leadership and willpower of 9+, cool of 8, and best of the lot, intelligence of 7. So, back to the Graph Cutter, not to be confused with the Ash Wastes Graph Cutter. More on that one slightly later on. The regular Graph Cutter is essentially a hoverboard that is in effect an indoor mount. Now, the rules for Graph Cutters were written prior to mounts being a thing, so they are very slightly different. I'll just read them verbatim. Graph Cutter rules are as follows. Fighter equipped with Graph Cutter increases their movement characteristic by 2, ignores all terrain, may move freely between levels without restriction, can never fall, and may move over enemy fighters ignoring the 1 inch rule. They may not, however, ignore impassable terrain, and may not end their movement with their base overlapping an obstacle or within 1 inch of another fighter's base. When a fighter equipped with a Graph Cutter is hit by a ranged attack, they do not become prone and pinned. However, the fighter equipped with the Graph Cutter is unable to perform the take cover basic action, nor can they voluntarily become prone and pinned for any other reason. In addition, a fighter equipped with a Graph Cutter is not able to make best use of cover, and to represent this, when an enemy fighter shoots at a fighter equipped with a Graph Cutter, any negative modifiers that apply to the hit roll due to cover are reduced by 1. Should a fighter with a Graph Cutter ever become prone for any reason, due to being seriously injured and then recovering for example, they are unable to make the stand-up basic action and must instead make the stand-up double action, regardless of any other special rules or skills that may otherwise affect their ability to stand up, e.g. the spring up skill. They also come with flyby attacks. A fighter equipped with a Graph Cutter is able to make use of its speed and bulk to strike down enemy fighters as they pass them by. A fighter equipped with a Graph Cutter may perform the following action. Hit and run, basic. This fighter may move a distance up to their movement characteristic exactly as if they were making a move simple action. If, during the course of this movement, the fighter passes over any enemy fighters, nominate one of those fighters to be the target of a single attack, representing the fighter attempting to strike them with a glancing blow with the Graph Cutter. Make a single hit roll by making a weapon skill check as normal. If check is passed, resolve a strength 4 AP dash, damage 1 hit against that target, as if made by a weapon with the concussion and knockback traits. Now, for equipping these guys, I like the Las sub-carbine pistol option or the Las gun as a basic weapon. This makes your flying nuisance causers 85 and 80 credits respectively. The hand flamer is also a great option, but since it's template, blaze weapon, and blaze is always nice, but you can go full green goblin mode and give them only rad grenades for a total cost of 95 credits and make weird green goblin noises every time you move them. These lowly prospects can also get their hands on plasma grenades, because of course they can. And like I keep saying, Vansar has a technological workaround for just about every occasion, and a blast 3, strength 5, AP -1, 2 damage grenade is very much a solution for most problems. Yes, it has unstable, but it's a prospect. In the words of Ivan Drago, if he die, he die. So the subtech Our standard Juve. 35 credits, you get an armoured body glove and movement of 5, weapon skill 5 model who has 4+ ballistic skill, which again, compared to Van Saar in general, not great, but compared to every gang ever, is very workable. Strength and toughness of 3, 1 wound, and 1 attack with a 4+ initiative, rounding out their physical stats, which is arguably better than most Juves. Mental stats of 9+ leadership and willpower with 8+ and 7+ intelligence. Their cool is also 8+ and makes them great generally opening doors, but deathly afraid of loud noises. Equipment wise, I think they are realistically 2 options: Juve with lasgun and Juve with las sub-carbine. Lasgun Juve will be 45 credits and the las sub-carbine Juve is 50 on the nose. I think this is how you build a gang that has more than 6 models in it, and I think that the lowly humble Juve is how you fill out the gang numbers. Thematically, I like the idea of the irradiated old dudes running the show while the less irradiated youth are dazzled into gang life with the high-tech weapons, much like when you bought the gang. How art imitates life. Anyway, that about wraps up the main body of the gang. So let's look at the extras: the brutes, the pets, the vehicles, and vehicle crew available to House Van Saar. For House Brutes, Van Saar have 2 very similar but subtly different choices in the Arachne rigs, one being the normal Arachne rig servo suit and the other being the Ash Waste Jump Arachne rig. Worth noting though, and probably one to run past the arbitrator, is that the Ash Waste Jumper rig, for all it has ash wastes in the name, is just a brute option for Van Saar. It isn't explicitly stated, as far as I can see, that it's only for use in ash waste games. I'd say as an arbitrator that a Van Saar player can use it in the Underhive games, as it's just a brute option that's optimal for, but not exclusively for, life in the wastes. However, your arbitrator may say something different, so check first before you grab one. It's a great kit though, so grab one anyway. Just check first before you play with it. Or play with yourself. Moving swiftly on. So, first we have the Arachne Rig Servo Suit, of which you can have a maximum of 1. This comes with light carapace armour, giving it a 4+ save, with the option to upgrade to heavy carapace for an extra 20 credits, giving us a 3+ save in the front arc. Primarily skill access comes from shooting skill list, but it also comes with the superior weapons array skill baked in, meaning that rather than making a single shoot basic action each turn, this fighter may make 2 shoot simple actions per turn. Each action may be made with a different weapon, and each action may target a different enemy, provided that all of the other normal rules for target priority are followed. This is pretty damn good, given that it can be different weapons and different targets, but we'll come back to this as we get into the firepower on this thing. We can see from the stat line of 5-inch movement, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 4+, strength 5, toughness of 4 and 3 wounds. This rig brings some much needed toughness to your gang and can be a great close combat unit, which again shows the situational adaptability of House Van Saar using technology to their advantage. Coming in at 4 attacks base with 3-inch versatile strength 5 weapons. Take a note of that. This guy can be a menace, even on a D3 charge of 1. As long as your target is no more than 9-inch away, you are throwing 7 attacks out that are most likely not going to receive reaction attacks in return. However, you would need to forgo getting a plasma gun or rad gun or any other weapon really to go the punchy route. Because this is a brute model, you need to make the decision when you purchase it, as it can't be upgraded later on. I reckon there is good use of this guy with 4 servo arms with the twin-linked heavy las carbine it comes with as standard, because it's rapid fire 3, meaning up to 9 hits, which is silly. Oh, and remember the superior weapons array thing? Yeah, how about you shoot the rapid fire 3 nonsense gun again and potentially dish out a total of 18 hits, because Van Saar shooting reasons. It's unlikely, it's dumb, but being Necromunda, it is possible. Oh, and it's also plentiful, so don't worry about reloading, that's fine. Shoot away like a redneck in heat on Independence Day, for all anyone cares. Quick note though, It also has the twin link trait, which from Necro states verbatim, when a model makes a ranged attack with this weapon, they may reroll any number of the ammo dice rolled, however, they must accept the result of the reroll, even if it's worse. It's also listed as this in House of Artifice, however, this was published in about 2018 or so, and long before the current edition. It's also not listed in the core rules as a weapon trait, so I'm somewhat at a loss to do with what this actually is involving as part of this weapon profile. I'm leaning towards it being a hangover from a previous edition, possibly prior to Plentiful becoming a trait. Again, I would think that leaning towards this would now be used as it's replaced the word ammo from ammo dice with firepower, so re-rolling the firepower dice. It feels in the spirit of it, but if anyone actually knows or has any precedent, then please do post it in the comments so that we can all have a nosy, and it would help me as well. Anyway, back to weapon options. You can replace one servo arm with a plasma gun for a cost of 60 credits and a loss of 1 attack from the profile, and can replace another servo arm with a rad gun, also at the cost for 60 credits and also at the loss for another attack. So you can have base 3 attacks with either a plasma or rad gun, or 2 attacks with both plasma and rad gun. But that bumps the total cost up to 400 credits, which can be quite a lot depending on the campaign, or 240 credits for 0 upgrades. You get a fairly well-rounded, melee-capable brute with 3-inch versatile weapons and a 4+ save, providing some decent punching power to an overall shooting-focused elite gang. The second house brute option, of which you can have 2, comes in at 360 credits base with heavy carapace armour as standard, giving a great 3+ save in the front arc. It has similar stats to the Arachne rig in that the stat line of 5-inch movement, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 4+, strength 5, toughness of 4 and 3 wounds, however only 2 attacks. But these 2 attacks have 3-inch versatile and get +1 to hit at versatile range. So effectively 3+ weapon skill, all things considered, as long as you're staying out with that super close engagement range, which you should be doing with a versatile 3-inch weapon. These also hit at strength 5, so great at beating up everything from Juves to Goliath leaders, and they even do not bad against slave ogrins. And it also comes with the hip shooting skill and superior weapons array, so this is very mobile. Now, it will stay still to do the 2 shooting simple actions from superior weapons array skill, but having the option to use run and gun, the double action, to move 10-inch and fire a weapon at -1 ballistic skill gives a lot of tactical options. Nobody ever expects to be in the threat range of a massive robot moving 10 inches and blapping with rapid fire 3, twin linked heavy las carbine, another 15 inches hitting on 4s when they were a whole 2 zone mortalis tiles away. Welcome to the Underhive. The Ass Jumper also has a special item of war gear called the Arachne Rig Jump Boosters, which reads, once per activation, a fighter equipped with Arachne Rig Jump Boosters may choose to use them to perform a move simple or charge double action. When they do so, they add 3-inch to their movement characteristic for the duration of the action. When a fighter moves with the aid of Arachne Rig Jump Boosters, up to half of their total movement may be made vertically, allowing the fighter to move between levels, and even to move over impassable terrain if they have sufficient movement to do so. However, should the fighter's movement end in the air, i.e. the fighter does not have sufficient movement to land safely on a level surface, they will fall the remaining distance. Note that if this distance is 2-inch or less, the fighter will count as jumping down. Should a fighter use Arachne Rig Jump Boosters when making a charge double action, for the duration of this activation they may apply both +1 modifier to each hit roll they make and +1 modifier to strength characteristic. This is a great amount of tactical flexibility for you, and makes the Ash Waste version of the jump rig arguably just as powerful as the regular servo suit in the close confines of Zone Mortalis. And now onto crew, vehicles and exotic beasts. Let's take a start with the crew. The Technica. This guy is for all of your Ash Waste vehicle needs, and they have 2 pretty standout features that you need to keep in mind when building a vehicle around them. First being, they come with a mighty ballistic skill of 3+, and the second being access to shooting skills as a primary skill set. Now, that alone has the makings of a pretty formidable range threat, but for now let's take a closer look at 3 great shooting skills and how they apply to vehicles. The first one being the hip shooting skill for a vehicle, meaning that the vehicle may move as if making a move simple action, halving its movement characteristic at any point before, during or after its move. The vehicle makes a ranged attack with either one weapon as the crew operated trait or a pistol. Extra mobility is nice, but shooting a potentially massive gun twice, well, that very much makes everything better, at least for Van Saar, not for everyone else. Fast Shot does much the same thing by turning the fire all action into a simple action. However, keep in mind that if the weapon the vehicle is using has the unwieldy trait, the skill doesn't apply to that. Marksman is another potentially powerful skill choice for a vehicle, though only for ones without weapons with a blast trait. But this skill, 6s to hit, double the weapon's normal damage. Now, you still need to get past armour, saves, all that stuff, but a las cannon being strength 10, AP -3 and 6 damage, you just made yourself a ridge hauler hunter. Hitting and wounding front armour on 3s, 6+ save. Oh no, 6 damage you say? That's very sad for you. Anyway, so, you get the point. Ballistic skill 3 is good, and the shooting skills are good. Now, onto the vehicle armoury for Van Saar, starting at the lower cost end, both being 130 credits. You can have either plasma cannon or the rad cannon. Let's take a look at the plasma cannon first. As we can see, the low power setting is for mulching most gangers and toughness 3 targets with its strength 6, AP -1 and rapid fire. So imagine how much crowd control or overkill can be achieved with this and the hip shooting skill on a vehicle with 3+. Yeah. Rad cannon is also available if you fancy leaning into blast and rad phage, but as with gangers and rad weapons, it's more of a niche or tech into it choice. It's very fluffy, very flavourful, but it's definitely a choice. You have to consider this alongside a plasma cannon for the same price. Heavy hitters of heavy weapons with Van Saar, on the vehicle list at least, you have access to las cannons at 155 credits and the multi-melta at 180 credits. Multi-melta first, short range 12, +1 ballistic skill, meaning you'll smack most stuff on a 2+. Long range is 24 with no modifier, which again, because Van Saar reasons, will most likely hit things on a 3+. Both ranges are -4 AP, strength 8 and 3 damage. Melta is absolutely devastating at short range against non-vehicle targets due to the melta trait just immediately putting a target out of action if it's reduced to 0 wounds, which at -4 AP and damage 3 will be almost literally every non-vehicle thing. However, oddly, the melta trait at short range against vehicles just means an extra damage dice is rolled, which is definitely not bad, but it just feels a bit underwhelming somehow compared to how meltas are in the lore. Anyway, the las cannon we previously spoke about being peak shenanigans material when combined with ballistic skill 3 and relevant shooting skills comes in at 155 credits. Short range of 24 inch, 40 inch long range and +1 to hit rolls at long range. Strength of 10, AP -3 and 3 damage a pop. This is what you take for the obliteration of vehicles, key characters, friendships and social harmony. You, being a superior Van Saar player, have no need for such petty things anyway. But yeah, this is the option you take when your group are all running ridge haulers, for example, but it will make you that guy. This is the thing about Van Saar. They're pretty well tooled and skilled to adapt to most things your group can throw at you, but the trick is not becoming an edgelord and not making everyone hate them more, or becoming the Necromunda equivalent of a Tau gunline. Consider yourself suitably warned. At present, Van Saar don't have a house vehicle kit, but that doesn't mean you can't make one using the rules for custom vehicles. I'm even toying with the idea of an Eldari Wave Serpent as a custom medium skimmer for my own Van Saar gang, but as it stands, outside of kit bashing conversions or repurposing something else, you're stuck with generic vehicles or kit bashing your own one using the custom rules. Mounts wise, you have access to the Ash Waste Grav Cutter, which is definitely only for use in Ash Waste and not indoors. It gives the keyword mounted, so you can only use this in games where fighters with the mounted condition are allowed. The regular grav cutter, the indoors grav cutter, can still be used in the ash waste by Neotechs, etc. They just don't count as mounted for the sake of things that are mounted. They should have used another word. Thanks, Games Workshop. The ash waste grav cutter has almost exactly the same rules as the regular grav cutter. It's just that it has the mounted keyword. So you can give this to anyone you want for use in ash wastes or in scenarios that allow the mounted condition on these fighters, but that's pretty much it as far as this goes. It does, however, mean that in the ash wastes you could have a champion on an ash waste grav cutter. Just don't expect to be using that indoors unless your Neotech advances to being a champion and retains the grav cutter. On to the House Exotic Beast. Have you ever wanted a mechanical nightmare skull as a pet? Bet you have. That's where this thing comes in. The Cyberachnid is the exotic beast that follows all the normal rules for exotic beasts, but has a few interesting additional special rules in the form of one being clamber. When this fighter climbs, vertical distance they move is not halved. In other words, they always count as climbing up and down a ladder. And now this one, fear-inducing. Cyberachnids have the fearsome ferocity skill and may confer this onto their owner. The owner gains this skill provided they have an active cyberachnid within 3 inches of them, otherwise the skill is lost. Note that doesn't say it has to belong to that fighter. Just bear that in mind for cheesy shenanigans, and arbitrators take note. You might want to house rule this to be, no, this clearly only applies to the fighter who owns the terrifying mortal skull. They also have the fearsome skill, meaning that if an enemy makes a charge action that targets this fighter, they must make a willpower check before moving. If the check is failed, they cannot move and their activation ends immediately. The last one of these skills, so to speak, that this terrifying mortal skull has is horrific. A cyberachnid is a horrific meld of machine and spider that gangers of other houses would just as soon not have in their hideout. Cyberachnid can never be captured. Weapons-wise, it's equipped with Venomous Bite, that is a toxin weapon, and Web Projector, which is a Strength 2 Weber, which, well, Web is great, Strength 2 Weber is not. And 75 credits, this exotic beast is very much bottom of my list and must have. Yes, the giving out a fearsome trait to its owner and potentially other people, arbitrator depending, of this mechanical skull abomination from Toy Story, you know, the one that Sid has that kind of crawls around and terrifies Woody and Buzz, and then they're like, oh, it's actually quite nice. Yeah, that, but evil. I wouldn't be building a gang with this as a first round draft pick, to be honest. Which brings us neatly on to gang lists and sample 1000 credit gang lists. First one being Oops, all plasma, and the second one being rad themed. Let's go through the plasma one first. Oops, only plasma comes in at 985 credits, leaving you 15 credits left over at creation. Gang size being 6. So, let's just get stuck in. We've went with the Plasma Prime at 245 credits. You're going to see a theme in this list very, very quickly. He's a leader with a plasma gun. Followed up by the Augmech at 225 credits. He is a champion with a plasma gun. Followed up by another Augmech at 225 credits, who also has a plasma gun, and a specialist ganger at 180 credits with also a plasma gun, and 2 disposable juves, basically just to park in front of champions or leaders as need be. The Oops only plasma list is very much a one-trick pony, and you can argue it's making the most of Van Saar's ridiculous shooting skills and access to plasma weaponry straight off the bat, but come on, really? The Radphage themed gang comes in at exactly 1000 credits, making the most use out of your 1000 starting credits as you can, and comes with a gang size of 7. Our leader weighs in at 180 credits, comes equipped with a lasgun and rad grenades. For skill, I have taken Iron Will just due to the low model count for a generally low model count gang to help keep people on the board. We have an Archaeotech as a champion coming in at 210 credits, this one with the Rad Beamer, plan being to buy this spider rig later on. Skill being Munitioneer, to get good ammo rerolls again if needs be later on when we upgun. Sticking with the if you're doing rad, then do rad. Our Tech Hunter comes with the rad gun, which is a template weapon, dishing out rad phage for 175 credits. Our actual specialist, who's not just a specialist, but as a specialist. So our specialist ganger is 185 credits, and he comes with the grav gun for a bit of crowd control, making use of the gravitation pulse, which we've previously talked about being at least something different and a bit more fun for your opponents to play against. Our ganger comes in at 100 credits with a las gun and rad grenades, and our sub-tech Juve, the first one, comes in at 75 credits with las sub-carbine and rad grenades, and our second one is a carbon copy again at 75 credits with las sub-carbine and rad grenades. Name of the game here is get Juves out front, make use of templates, and do chip damage as often as possible with rad grenades. You are probably going to miss throwing grenades with a Juve at ballistic skill 4, but it's a blast template. It's not a huge one, but it is a blast template. So be liberal with your use of rad grenades, and if you start to run out of them, make sure you're parked near that champion to make use of the munition your skill. If you have made it this far through the video, then sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch or listen, as the case may be, and I'm always interested to see what people are more interested in, if it's more the visual or it's the listening, so let me know. This gang deep dive Autopsy, like the others, is a labour of love and takes me a good chunk of free time, which is very limited between children, life and work, to research, plan, write and produce. So again, thank you very much to everyone who's taken the time to view this. If you're not already, then consider doing the thing, and if you've already done the thing, then that's cool, and if you don't want to do the thing, that's also cool. Not everything's for everyone. So, until next time, I will see you somewhere in the Underhive or in a deep dive.